Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In podcast. Last stop of the Apex for 2023 this Saturday. We got UFC Vegas 83. Was a fight card originally, I do believe, supposed to take place in China. Not only did we lose that, but lost Peter Yan in the main event as well. So stepping up to fight Song Yadong on 5-round short notice here is Chris Gutierrez in our main event. At light heavyweight in our co-main event, another short notice bout that kind of just came together. Anthony Lionheart-Smith stepping in to take on Khalil Rountree, left with currently just 11 fights at the moment. So, man, before we jump into things, as always, hand it over to you to recap what was a really, really good card, but some forgettable results for us both, man.
Yeah, for sure. We'll take a look over at your card first. Your best straight bet was the Arman Tsarukyan. You got him at a good closing number at minus 190 for 2 units. Looking at your next best play, I got to say it's this parlay where you had Fight Not to start round 3 in both the Reese Brundage fight and the Ihor Potieria and Bellato fight. Both those were solid bets. I think it would have been wild for either of those to hit round 3. Yep. One that you'd probably want back, minus 250 on Punahele Soriano. Turns out he just is not it, man. I thought it was the matchups as well, but I just don't think that he's got it at a UFC caliber. You ended up the night minus 3.33 units. And then looking over at my card, I also got in on the font line. It dropped down to minus 120 by fight time. And that was kind of where I was wanting it to hit before I played it, and did not pan out. Turns out Figgy is real deal, whether it's at 125 or 135. My favorite play was the Drakkar Close. Was so close to laying a lot of units on him, dude. And he turned out to be the side in some tough positions, but showed he was a stronger competitor for sure. And then let's see, my next best bet, I think, was the Jalen Turner inside the distance and fight doesn't go the distance. He's the real deal, even if it's in on short notice. And then let's see, last thing was the Reese wins by sub round 1. He had it locked up, Brundage just slammed him on his head. I can't believe we had 2 slam KOs that night, but
back to back, right?
Back to back. That's incredible, man. Absolutely incredible. Minus 2.74 units for me. So yeah, forgettable night for the both of us for sure, but nothing we can't come back from. We start off the night in the strawweight division where we see 2 newcomers in Rayanne dos Santos taking on Talita Alencar. For me, I think that Santos looks like a pretty decent prospect. She's decent everywhere. Whenever she was in Invicta, she was fighting at 105 pounds. I think that that's going to play a big factor in this one. Alencar, almost straight Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, has all the credentials in the world. When she grapples at 130 pounds. Now, we have seen of the 6 losses that Santos has on her career, she has been submitted. Now, the girl that submitted her is also a stud. I think a future UFC competitor. She's like 9-1 right now. But I do think Alencar has the same level of grappling as the girl who's already sub Santos. And you can get Alencar sub at plus 500. I do think that that's her path to victory. Obviously, she could get some top control, some top time, or just some like back control if she gets the fight to the ground. This could also be a play where we just want to gather some information on 2 newcomers. But for me, I think that the number's right in Alencar sub plus 500. That's her path to victory, and this girl's given it up in the past.
Yeah, that's actually surprisingly something I hadn't actually looked at this week, seeing that Talita has that big of a grappling edge. And I feel like that's a great number to play her at, as it like you said, covers so much of her win portion. I think I originally was kind of on the Dos Santos side just because I do think it's low levels women's MMA. She's the far more experienced girl, I think, who's fought the tougher competition. She's younger. What is Alencar? 33, 34 years old already, making her UFC debut here. She's kind of proven that, she can be up 2 rounds with her phenomenal grappling, and, all the wheels fall off in round 3. So, even at dog money, not really eager to back her, but I really do like that sub prop. I think I'm going to lean on the side of Rayanne dos Santos to get the job done. I think live betting her could be a really good play. I think the line's going to flip early in this fight. But yeah, man, I really do think that that Alencar sub something I could find on my card. Real good find. Moving on, Tatsuro Taira, Carlos Hernandez at flyweight. it's the first leg to my 2-unit parlay. On paper, this line looks wide. It's gained a lot of steam this week, but to be honest, as far as how I see the fight playing out, I do think Taira covers a decent price tag and looks like a pretty wide favorite. I do think the striking still going to be, needing to improve. The guy's young. I think he's going to make massive leaps in all areas of his fight game. As far as stylistic matchup goes, I think it swings massively in his favor here. I think it's a great matchup for him. I think he finds his takedowns early and often here. Hernandez is a guy I kind of consider to be just a primary boxer. I will give him, he's got some decent wrestling. The wins in the UFC kind of soft in my opinion. And I just keep going back to how styles make fights, man. And I like Taira to if he doesn't get the submission, I think he has 10 plus minutes of control time. I think the UFC knows what they're doing. They've been matching him up great, throughout his run so far. And I think he comes out on top again here, man.
Yeah, Taira's one of these guys where I think that there are some holes in his game, but he's so good in the areas that he's, well-versed in, the wrestling specifically, the control time, that he covers his price tag if he can get it to the ground. And from what I've seen, it's like fighters, if they can withstand that early grappling pressure from him, they can make him work and expose a little bit more of those holes. But when Taira's in there, he is going to get you down onto the ground in the first round and hunt for a submission. We've seen Hernandez subbed in the first round in the UFC before. I think that there will be a look that Taira gets where he at least has a submission attempt in the first round. It's been Edgar Chairez drug that fight out more than I think a lot of the odds makers expected. So we're getting a decent price tag on the Taira round 1 sub at plus 340. I think that's his main path to victory. I took a shot on it with Zach Reese last week, but I do feel a little bit more comfortable in Taira's skill set. And given that we have seen Hernandez subbed in the first round by, I think Nascimento's a really, really good grappler, but I would say he's on the same level as Tatsuro Taira. So I especially like that we've seen it before. Carlos Hernandez has never been knocked out, nor has he knocked out anybody. And him not having a lot of strength, I do think that he'll get taken down sooner rather than later as this fight starts. Let's see. Moving on to the next fight, Stephanie Egger taking on Luana Santos. I don't have much about this fight, man. I think that both of these girls are a little reckless when they fight. Santos, in that last fight against Juliana Miller, she went for the finish 100%. And had she not gotten it, I'm not really sure what she looks like in those later rounds. I still think she's pretty green. And then Egger, she's very unpredictable, man. I think odds makers have a tough time picking her fights. But ultimately, I think they both have some pretty big holes. They're low-level women, and they're both submission artists. And I think that the opportunity is going to be there. I don't want to get greedy and try and go for like sub finish when you can get fight doesn't go the distance at even money. That's kind of how I'm looking at this fight. I think that there's some violence to be had. And somebody's going to get caught somewhere.
Well, yeah, plus money on an under for Stephanie Egger fight doesn't ever seem bad. I'm kind of torn on who I side with here, though. Sorry about that. Obviously, you can see we got a guest picker now for a little bit. With the Stephanie Egger and Luana Santos fight, I do like plus money for an under on a Stephanie Egger fight. Doesn't go the distance. You do see a lot of finishes in her fights. The way Luana Santos came out last time, gunning for a finish early. I kind of struggle to pick a side here, though. Egger seems like she kind of seems like a person the UFC has used as a stepping stone for a lot of their prospects. They're trying to kind of boost up the rankings. And I struggle to see where Luana Santos fits in. I don't think she's as good as Tracy Cortez or Mayra Buena Silva. I think she could be a little bit better than an Aileen Perez or a Jessica Rose Clark. I don't think I could go out here and lay juice on her, even though, I do think that's the A side, the one the UFC is looking to push here, prettier, 12 years younger. But I do think there's a chance that she gets stuck on bottom, that the fight gets hairy for a little bit. I almost want to side with Stephanie Egger here. So, plus money on low-level women's MMA could always be the side. So I'm going to side with Stephanie Egger, but I've also kind of considered some violence here this week myself. We move on to the lightweight division. Fights taking place at 155 this week. We got Steve Garcia versus Mel Costa. Rebooking from last week. Won't touch on it too much. It was Garcia, that pulled out weight cutting issues and things. So doesn't always, I don't know. Don't think it's going to pan out well here for him. I was on the Costa side the first time around. Feel like I should be even more this time around. Feel like he gets to finish down the stretch sometime.
Yeah, man. I think that the rebooking and then the live movement even further on the Costa side, it kind of, solidifies that he is the rightful favorite here. I do like a lot of what Garcia brings to the table, that pressure, but he does get dropped frequently, and Costa does like to set the traps on the feet. The Costa TKO line is kind of what I'm looking at, and you've got it all the way from opening at MGM at plus 125 to it at plus 195 currently at some other books. So there's a lot of space there. And I think the upper end of that, the plus 190 area for Costa to find the finish is probably the spot that I'm looking at.
Mahashate all over again.
Mahashate all over again. Let's see. We got at the 125 pound weight class, Ha-Seong Park taking on Shannon Ross. I'll be honest, I don't have much for this fight. Shannon Ross does not impress me. I wish that he showed even like an inkling of UFC caliber since he's been in the organization, but there just hasn't been that. I don't know if I can back him. I certainly don't think that anybody coming off a road to UFC is deserving of this type of price tag, especially when Park, there's holes in his game. He's wild. But I'm not sure that Shannon Ross is going to be the guy to do it. Not even sure if I have a bet written down for this fight. No, I don't have anything for this fight. So it's low level. I think that it'll be a good one to watch, but not something I'm looking at putting my money on.
Yeah, no action for me here either, which is quite rare because I've faded Shannon Ross in all of his UFC fights so far, stopped in under a minute in both of those. When I look at this fight, man, I feel like any bets, any bets here are fading Shannon Ross. There's nothing really that I've seen from Park. Like you said, nobody coming off the road to UFC should be minus 600 here. Even in his road to the UFC fights, they're somewhat come from behind wins, dropping rounds, getting dropped, having to find that third round submission. And, I'm not really sold on him on the feet. And I feel like that minus 600 price tag is a tag he's not going to cover on Saturday night. I don't know, man. Shannon Ross is just not the person that I want to lay hard-earned money on. He's a guy who's been finished in majority of his losses at flyweight, which is not something you like to see. So Park will likely find the finish, I think, on the mat, submission 2 or 3. I do think there's a big speed edge and stuff on the feet for him, but yeah, not impressed myself, man, and shouldn't have any action on this fight either. Moving up to 170, we have Kenan Song taking on Kevin Jousset. I tried to fade Kenan Song last time, laying the chalk on Bedoya, and I was on Kevin Jousset in his debut here. But I've kind of flip-flopped, and I'm on the Kenan Song side. My biggest knock for the guy for the longest time was the inactivity. I really didn't like the way he was finished by Max Griffin. The guy's pretty low volume, doesn't have the best output. But, man, Ian Gary fight, the last fight with Bedoya, the dude's got some pop in his shots, and while he might not have the biggest volume, when he does land, it does make a difference, and I feel that's what the judges are looking for nowadays. With Jousset, I said I cashed on him on his debut. But man, the first couple minutes of that fight were a little bit hairy. His striking defense was not up to par. The leg kicks, he throws a ton of them. Some of them, he doesn't hide them too well. He does like to mix in his grappling. Don't know how much success he's going to have here. There's no way I go back to the well with Kevin Jousset here. I like what I see from Kenan Song at plus money. I saw you release a bet for him earlier. I know you're on him as an underdog. I opted to take the point spread at minus 130. I think it goes to decision. I think Kenan Song lands, the more meaningful shots. It's the card, tailored to the Asian fighters and things here. So I'd like Kenan Song to either lose a close decision, steal a close decision, something. But I like it to go the scorecards, and I think he's going to get the nod.
Man, to be honest with you, I'm kind of kicking myself for not looking at finish only. Kenan Song plus 120 finish only. I kind of like that better, man, because you touched on he's the volume doesn't help, so he's kind of losing until he's not. And he definitely, if he is able to kind of draw his opponent into a slugfest, he can show that he has the power. That being said, like, I do think that a lot of the time he's going to be losing this fight until he lands something. So I would have preferred to play this plus 120 finish only line for Kenan Song. I'm kind of kicking myself. I don't know if I want to double down, if this is a high enough level fight to do anything like that. But yeah, that's how I'd be looking to play it at this point. I think Kevin Jousset has shown us that he's a pretty good fighter. I just don't think that he's proven at a UFC caliber, and at least we've seen Song win at the UFC level against somebody that deserving, not Crosby.
Yeah, Kiefer Crosby, right?
Kiefer Crosby, yeah. So yeah, the Song, I'm on him. I like that I took his money line. I hope that he can just win straight up, because I am worried about him dropping a decision if he can't find that shot. So yeah, glad that we're both on him for sure. Moving up to the main card, Andre Muniz taking on Jun-Young Park at 185 pounds. I like Jun-Young Park. I've bet him quite a bit actually in the past, but I don't think that he is great by any means. I think that he's pretty good everywhere. He doesn't have him moving down to. Has he always been? Okay, I guess he's always been 185 for some reason. I'm thinking maybe of. No, I don't know. I thought that he was 205 at one point. But anyway, Jun-Young Park, I think that he's the type of fighter that if he's fighting somebody with a specialty like Gregory Rodriguez being the striker that he is, or Anthony Hernandez being the grappler that he is, that's where he finds himself in a little bit of trouble. And in a weird way, I think Muniz fits this mold perfectly, where if Jun-Young Park doesn't have the fight IQ to keep this standing on the feet, I think that he could probably find himself in some trouble on the ground against Muniz, who relies on his submission specialty. Jun-Young Park, I think that he thinks that he can take anybody anywhere. And like I said, when he runs into these specialists, that's where he kind of gets himself in trouble. Whenever he's fighting guys like Marc-Andre Barriou, Eric Anders, Dennis Tulilian, like none of those guys bring a specialty to the table. And the times that he has fought somebody with a specific skill set, he's dropped the ball. And like I said, it's weird that this is the only way I see it happening, but I do think that Muniz has that ability. So maybe Muniz by sub, but I wouldn't even try and get cute with it. Muniz sitting at plus money is more than enough. And yeah, I think I'm on the Muniz side here. Curious to hear what you think.
On the Muniz side myself, man, especially early on, I think Muniz is super, super live. That 1.5 round mark could get a bit hairy. Park is someone who has got a above average gas tank for the middleweight division, and if you show the slightest inkling of slowing down, he can turn it up and put you away. But man, I think Muniz is going to look so much bigger here in the cage. 99% of his fights hit the mat every single time, and I really think that size and jiu-jitsu is going to come into a play. If he doesn't submit him, I see him locking up a body triangle, riding out significant top time, back time on Jun-Young Park here. When I look at, who Jun-Young Park has actually beaten when he's looked great, I mean, Albert Duraev, that was a good one. It was, but shattered his nose early. I don't know. The other ones, man, John Phillips, Joseph Holmes, Dennis Tulilian. I mean, that's bottom of the barrel. That's low level wins. You can argue Eric Anders should have beat this guy. I don't know, man. I really do feel like Jun-Young Park's win condition here is predicated on Muniz gassing here, and I don't think that's something I can guarantee when I feel like Muniz is going to be in a lot of dominant positions and not having to fight for a lot of them. So I like plus money on Muniz. I feel like he could find that sub, and I love to hear that you're on the same side. Could be something that ends up on my card too, man. Moving down to the lightweight division, Nasrat Haqparast versus Jamie Mullarkey. This is truly the fight that I haven't done a ton of tape on. A fight, honestly, I don't really even care too much, man. It seems like a filler just to get on the card here. You got the over 2.5 at -250. I couldn't agree more. I really do think the scorecard, I think it hits the scorecards at a really, really high clip. I just, I look at Mullarkey, man, and when I saw he was only 29 years old, it was pretty crazy to me, to be honest with you. I would have said he's like 33 or 34. He's taken the damage of somebody who should be like 33 or 34 years old. He's very hittable, man. I really do think he's not reacting as well to shots anymore. I think he looks slower. And I feel like not only is Nasrat the way more technical striker, but he's got the way better footwork, and he's so much faster here. And if Mullarkey doesn't get his hands on him and make it dirty and find some takedowns, I feel like Nasrat dances around the outside, pieces him up for a decision. So I like Nasrat by decision here.
Yeah, dude, I think I'm finding myself on the same side. I've never really been a huge fan of Jamie Mullarkey, man. Like you said, he brings a lot of pressure, but the way that he takes damage, and then as he's continued down his career, it's like whenever he's facing guys who are dangerous, like Naimov and Jalen Turner, he is getting finished. But when he's fighting guys like Michael Johnson and John McDessie, it's tough for them to finish him. And I feel like Haqparast fits into the McDessie, Michael Johnson mold more than he does a prolific finisher. So I'm on the McDessie or the Haqparast side. I think -185 is like probably where I'd line it if it were to come down, if Mullarkey were to start getting more love over the course of the week and we could get Haqparast at like -150. That's where I'd start to look at playing him. But at the current price tag, I think it's just a layoff fight. Not even necessarily one that I'm looking forward to. I'm kind of with you, man. I think it's a little bit of a filler fight. Yeah. Moving on to the what I don't know. Let's see. Maybe my favorite fight on the card. I like this fight. I know that they just scrapped it together, but I think that this is a really, really cool fight. At 135 pounds, Sumudaerji taking on Tim Elliott. Mudaerji was supposed to be fighting, help me out, Nascimento, and Nascimento pulled out. They were both accepting of this fight. Now, they had already been set to face each other before, so I think that they're kind of familiar with each other as far as mentally preparing to fight each other. They were under the same mindset. Elliott told in his recent interviews that he only had 2 practices of his training camp before he got that call. Now, he's also said that at this point in his career, he feels like he really wants to showcase his striking, which I'm not sure if he's playing a game or what, but he's like, I find myself constantly wanting to get the takedown, and I don't want to do that this time. I want to show that I can still stand with the best of them, and then maybe down the line mix in the takedowns. But my recommendation is that he shoots for takedowns quick and as soon as possible, man. Mudaerji is one of the cleaner strikers in the division, somebody who I really like to watch as a fighter. And I wish that the UFC would do him a little bit more favors, giving him other striking matches. The Match Snell fight was exactly what we want, But
what
this
a treat that was to watch back.
That was so cool, dude. So I'm not sure, man. As far as Elliott, where he's at in his life, he's got some personal issues that have been out in the public. He switched camps to a camp in Texas where he is the only professional in his weight class at the camp. He's training with a lot of amateur fighters, so he's not getting the same amount of looks that he used to get. Here are some things that are working against Mudaerji. Mudaerji is coming off of an ACL tear. That's why he's been out this long. And let's see. I do think that Tim Elliott's going to be the significantly bigger fighter. On paper, Mudaerji is the taller, longer reach and everything, but walking around weight, I know that Tim Elliott says that he walks around in the mid 150s, and that's not the case for Sumudaerji. So I do think that, I could be wrong. Is this not at 135? I thought that was it supposed to be at 125 and they brought it up to 135?
I would likely say so with Tim taking it on short notice. That's probably why it's 135.
Okay, so that makes sense. Tim Elliott's going to be the bigger fighter in there, and I do think that if he can get that wrestling going, he can, nullify the offense of Sumudaerji, which would be the worst way for this fight to play out. But I'd love to see this fight, if Tim Elliott's for real, stay on the feet. I think Mudaerji could absolutely do some work. And then Tim Elliott, if the going gets rough, he's got that veteran savvy. He could mix in the takedowns and make this a really close fight. So this is my favorite fight of the card. I'm not necessarily that I have a bet on it, though.
Yeah, I'm pumped for this one as well. Like you said, I feel like the fight got better, even though it was a short making here. Man,
I've got Tim Elliott for the record. I think Tim Elliott's going to win.
I think I'm going to be on the other side. I think I'm going to take Sumudaerji here. You know, it's a pretty similar style for Su. You know, I think you said he had previously been matched up with Tim. Didn't even realize that. But as far as like what he's been training for, he's been training for someone who's looking to take him down here, looking for some, you know, to lock up a submission. So I feel like even though it's a short notice fight, you know, not a big switch up in a game plan from Su. With Tim Elliott, my biggest concern for the guy is the cardio. You know, he kind of looks good early in the fights, but he really, at 37 years old, has kind of started to take a dip later in these rounds, and now it's on short notice. He's adding some extra weight to him. I am worried that if that finish doesn't come early, that he could start to get pieced up down the stretch. And with Sumudaerji, the dude's very, very slick on the feet, long for the division. He uses the jab very well. The elbows and the clinch against Matt Schnell were sweet.
Trains with Song Yadong too.
That's nice to know. But the knee pads, you already talked about the ACL injury. He was wearing knee pads already. I don't know, man. I do know that Tim has most definitely an advantage in this fight with the wrestling, but not being on a full camp here, I'm not so sure that the cardio is gonna get it done for as long as it needs to. So I think early on it could be looking like Tim Elliott's way, and Su could really start to take over the later this fight goes. I think the line's coming down. I don't know if I'll get on the Su line, but I do think some action's been coming on him lately. Co-main event, we got Anthony Smith versus Khalil Rountree at 205. Another short notice making. Anthony Smith stepping in here on about a week and a half notice. I don't want to sound a bit harsh, but man, I think Anthony Smith he's washed. Just straight up, man. You know, he's got over 50. I think he's making his 54th professional walk. Ton of fight miles. All of his fights are wars where he's taking a lot of damage. You throw in the home invasion stuff that he was dealing with, sitting pretty behind the commentary booth a lot now. I don't think it's the same Lionheart anymore. As far as like killer instinct, I don't think he has it. I think he's always going to be tough as nails. He's always going to be one where he'll take it up until you really put him away. But I don't think Anthony Smith has it anymore, man. And I've been tempted kind of all week at that big plus number to take Anthony Smith because I do see advantages here. You know, I do think he could get this fight to the mat. He could look like a massive favorite if he gets this fight to the mat, but he's just not in the spot that I really want to back him, man. I feel like on the feet, this is Khalil's fight. That lead leg of Anthony Smith is going to get absolutely chewed up. If Khalil wakes up on the right side of the bed on Saturday, that might happen. But if Khalil wakes up on the wrong side of the bed on Saturday, you could just get an absolute shell of himself. You know, he's a wild card, so in no way could I go laying this type of chalk on him either. So, man, I do think we have violence in our co-main event, but I'm going to lean with Khalil Rountree. I don't have a ton of confidence in him, man, though, just being honest with you.
Okay, so I have a draft in my tweets where it was like top 5 fighters that I think just don't want to fight at any given night that they show up. Cowboy Cerrone, William Knight, Rose Namajunas, Khalil Rountree, and Uriah Hall. I think that's an excellent list, dude. Like, you nailed it. There's just some times where he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, something says something to throw him off, and he's a complete shell of himself. Anthony Smith is an honorable mention to that list right there, man. You know,
he's number one. 6.
Yeah, dude. You just don't know whenever he goes in there what type of fighter is going to show up. I think Anthony Smith is really sharp. I think that he's still got his wits about him, even though he has gone through 50-plus fights. That being said, I thought he showed in his interview maybe just like a lack of self-awareness. He compared himself to Volkanovski when Volk took his fight against Islam on short notice and said that, like Volk, he gets a little stir crazy when he doesn't have a fight and he starts to get a little depressed. And even if his life is going really good, it doesn't seem like that to him. So he wanted to get this fight. And I'm like, that dude just got knocked out in the first round by a head kick, dude. Why would you want to openly compare yourself to that? So that was like my first big red flag. Now, what I did like is Smith refers to Khalil as a striker. He said openly, like, I have a clear advantage on the ground. So I at least know that he's going to try to get it there. I like the Smith by submission. The way that I like to play this one, I'm trying to get cute with the props, but I can't help it, man. I like Smith by submission at plus 600. I just locked that in before the podcast, and I think that that's how he gets this fight done on short notice. I don't really see him outworking Khalil Rountree, but I could definitely see him getting caught. Another way that I like playing this is Khalil Rountree round 2. I think if Anthony Smith can't get this fight to the ground early on, he's going to fade way quicker than he usually does without a full fight camp. Khalil has 2 second-round finishes in his last 4 wins. I think that that's kind of what we're going to see here is Anthony Smith crumble come that second round, and you can get that at plus 600 as well. So I don't know. Those are the 2 ways that I like. I see this fight playing out. As far as picking a side, I'll take Khalil Rountree all day. I think that if he does show up and he's ready to fight, I think that he's just in a different point in his career than Anthony Smith. Once you get on that commentary table, it's tough to come back and back you. So,
downhill slope.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to the main event, Song Yadong taking on Chris Gutierrez. You made this play earlier today, and I got it circled, man. Like the fight doesn't go the distance. I think both of these guys share a lot of ability to end a fight. Chris Gutierrez, multiple stoppages with leg kicks. I mean, pound for pound, one of the toughest leg kicks in the game, according to the training room legend. And he's actually proven it a couple times in the octagon. So that's something that you want to see. Song Yadong, I think that he will be champ eventually. He's got time, man. He's got so much time to improve his game. As far as the athleticism, the physical aspect of MMA, I think that you probably couldn't craft a better body for MMA. He doesn't get tired. He brings the pressure. I think that over the course of 5 rounds, we could see him, just like the Ricky Simone, just break down Chris Gutierrez, who's going to be fighting off of his back foot. But on that same token, that Chris Gutierrez, if he is able to get that leg kick going, especially early and hurt Song, that's going to be something that he has to deal with for 20 more minutes. And I think that he could run into some issues there. I'm on the Song Yadong side. I don't love this price tag. I've bet and correctly bet Song Yadong fights the last like 4 or 5 fights that he's had. And this one, I'm having a tough time figuring out how I want to play it. But that under, man, I really love that you made that play earlier today, and I'll probably end up on the same side as you.
Yeah, 5 rounds for minus 125 for what I think is a mismatch. I really like it. I'm big on the Yadong side here. It could be a square play. I knew the lines were going to move. I got Yadong and Taira in a parlay, made it last weekend. Song's to be the big justified favorite here in my eyes, and I think he covers it. As far as these guys on the feet, a lot of the finishing upside I feel like is on Song's side, a lot faster. I feel like his boxing is so much cleaner, way more power on the feet. If anybody's wrestling here, it's going to be Song Yadong. The 5-round experience, the competition. Man, I watched that fight back with Corey Sandhagen this week, and dude, that fight alone is enough to tell me that he gets through Chris Gutierrez on Saturday. I mean, that fight could have gone Song's way very easily had it was not stopped, in the 5th round due to that cut. And I feel like I rate Corey Sandhagen very, very highly. And so, Song is like, I don't even know what, 25, 26 years old now, vastly improving. And, Chris, I just faded him against Pedro Munoz, a guy who's almost 40. He was out there dropping Chris Gutierrez, 30-27 him. And I don't know, man. I think Chris Gutierrez has kind of been on a lucky streak. He's someone who never really runs away with the fights, wins a lot of them by split decision. The Felipe Colares, the De Freitas, both, I think those are both split decisions. Low-level competition. The Dana Badcarel fight, I was on Dana that night and was clearly on the right side until that spinning back fist, man. I don't know. Outside of his dancing around, landing leg kicks for 25 minutes, on a fight card that's made and surrounded around Song Yadong. I don't know how Chris gets this job done, man. I'm on Song all day here. I really do think he could win just about any way he wants to on Saturday.
I like it.
Like a couple of those sub props and things, couple maybe the under in the Egger fight. So be keeping an eye out for some bets from us. Throw some out on Twitter this week. I think we only got 11 fights going down. Last stop at the Apex. We got UFC 296 next weekend, I think, just to round out the year. And that's it, man. So just one more fight card. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We'll see you next week.
Peace.